afternoon, viewers, and welcome to Futsal868 Corner Talks. My name is Geoffrey Edwards, your host and president of the Futsal Association of Trinidad Tobago. Futsal868 Corner Talks is an online meetup series where global sporting professionals share their experiences and perspectives on the fastest growing indoor sport in the world, futsal. Our main objective is to sensitize and educate sport stakeholders on the sport of futsal, and in this case, other pressing local and global issues. Before and after the UNESCO statements on race in 1950, many have argued whether race is a biological phenomenon or a social construct. The horrendous death of George Floyd and resulting global protests within the last few weeks have reignited the necessary conversation of race and social justice. As a sport administrator and fan, I asked the Futsal868 team and myself, how does sport fit in all of this? Isn't sport supposed to be apolitical? From our research, sports protests pertaining to and for social justice goes deep and far. Before you give you this brief history lesson, it's important to understand that these protests hinge on race, gender, money, and nationality, with all having a common theme: the constant struggle for justice. On January 13th, 532 AD, at the chariot races, in constant tumble, rival drivers from the blues and greens teams asked the emperor to pardon two of their followers who had been condemned to die. His refusal led to a revolt, 6 weeks of rioting that resulted in deaths of 30,000 persons. Let's take a quick look down memory lane. So from that video, it shows that taking a knee during the national anthem is not exactly unprecedented or nearly as calamitous. Athletes in modern times have often been moved to protest conditions to demonstrate that they are citizens of conscience by speaking truth to power. Given this backdrop, the 11th episode of Futsal868 Corner Talks will attempt to address the role of sport in racial inequality and social justice. To help us understand this pressing and thought-provoking topic, we are joined by our virtual studios, Mr. Brian Lewis, President of the Trinidad Tobago Olympic Committee, Mr. Kenwin Jones, former professional footballer and captain of the men's national football team, Mr. Keevo Lewis, comedian and social media influencer. We still have to join us, Mr. Ken McCue. He is in Ireland. Our team just messaged him. We are waiting to join us. But as always, as Mr. Lewis knows, Mr. Brian Lewis knows, the show must go on. So good day, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us on our Futsal 868 Corner Talks. Let's get straight into it. Mr. Lewis, can you give us, with the ambiguity and the confusion of the term race that we introduced at the beginning, can you define for us that term?
Racism?
Well, race, the term race.
Well, I mean, there's this definition that says you whether it is by the color of race, whether you're black, white, or perceived first indigenous people, whether ethnicity, religion, any type of prejudice, any type of bias is real. There are different interpretations of racism, but I tend to simplify it, having grown up in Belmont, right? Racism is really when a group of people, for whether it is by ethnicity, race, religion, perceive themselves as superior to another group. And that's the definition I tend to operate with in terms of defining racism.
To our social media influencer and the man on the ground, Mr. Keevo Lewis, can you add any value to that, sir?
Well, good afternoon to everyone. For me, I think race has been an evolved term over a period of time, and the way I see it, I saw race initially was all about the social qualities of a group of people, right? So if we look at the way in which our group operates, and if we take it just in terms of, let's say, for example, let's look at a racetrack, right? Each person on the track between those lines operated a certain way, and their race is based on their social qualities and also their physical appearance. And I think there has been an evolution where we just no longer think about their social qualities and how they add value to the world, more so on the negative impact or the negative outlook on just their physical qualities, down to the point where now we just look at the skin alone, right? So physical features, yes, but not even physical features. Now we are at the point of just the color of their skin. So from social qualities, how they operate as a group, to now just the color of their skin has been given negative stereotype based on media, and now we call that different types of race.
To Capitan, La Capitan. As a professional player, I go in hard at you one time. As a professional player, can you share?
So and again to answer that question?
No. I go at you hard one time. Man, that's too easy.
Well, I think that in itself has been clouded over time.
Right.
The question of race, in my mind, never existed. It has always been about economic power and class. If we, for the people that know and for the people that don't know, if you really dig into history and go back to when there was the Spanish Inquisition, there were a group of Black people from Africa called the Moors that went to Spain and taught them of the construction, economics, astrology, all that type of stuff, until it got to the point where, in a nutshell, because people of not the black color, they saw that they were being overrun in a lot of terms and not having anything to contribute. That is when they started this whole I would say repopulation of a race in mixing with the blacks of Africa, and then slowly started their war, their takeover in a lot of respects. So to me personally, I think all the derivatives of the race argument now, where you have, your physical appearance, what you contribute to society in terms of crime and all of that, is just derivatives of where that came from. It was all about economic power and class, basically.
So can I add? Let me throw a little Moruga scorpion pepper into the conversation, right?
I love that.
So way back in the 17th century, blacks, colored, Native Americans, indigenous people weren't considered fully human beings. And therefore they weren't entitled to the rights of full human beings, right? And then we had over 400 years of European domination of the world and the world civilization, and they instituted laws and practices that reinforce that blacks, colored, indigenous people, first people, Aborigines, that kind of American Native Indians weren't fully human beings, and therefore they didn't have the rights, right? So you had things like apartheid, even in as recent as 1958 in Belgium, you had a human zoo with black people, right? So I'm just saying, adding the scorpion pepper to all that we have said, because I agree that with both Mr. Lois, my namesake, and El Capitan, that over time it created a sort of derivative that maybe it has shifted focus a little bit to the fact that systemic and historical and cultural racism still has that underpinning that black, colored, and other, you know what I'm saying? We aren't fully human beings, and therefore don't deserve the same rights. And I'm just saying, before not to go on and on, when you look at, we'll jump around a lot, but when you look at the murder, the police murder of George Floyd, right? That action is of a human being who killing an animal, literally. Sorry to put it like that, right? Because 8 minutes and 46 seconds on May the 25th, but murder, kill the person like a human being, like an animal, not a human being.
Yeah, but still, for a lot of people, that is too complex to understand. Correct. If you even bring it to the man in the street, the man who have the most money in his pocket determines how the group of friends going to line, how they're going to interact, who could come, who could go. It depends on what you have to offer. At the end of the day, in America, as we look at it, they are now in power. They have all the economics, so they can afford to make laws and control the content of how people live because of the power they had. If all of us in one place and we have the same amount of money, and we're talking from a Trini mentality, right? If we all have the same amount of money, there is no way Jeffrey or Keevan or Mr. Brian Lewis, it have no way you could tell me how to come, how to go, where to sit, where to stand, because our mentality is, you know what, you cannot tell me anything. I have my own money in my pocket. We have the same amount of money. We're on the same level. So you are not going to determine how I walk, talk, act, whatever the case is.
So let's just push a little bit further. Take a one step further, and directly to you, Kenwin. Being a professional football player, you had money in your pocket, right? Can you share with us if you went through any racial inequality during your career?
Of course, I would think from possibly the first 10 years, 10, 12 years as it stands, because when you're in a system that is not designed for you to be equal, for you to be a servant, when you get involved in that system, there are a lot of things that are going to that you are going to be dependent on for equality. So even though you are being paid, right, you have issues such as the fact that you're not from that system. So you have to walk, talk, act, behave a certain way in order to be able to stay in that system. So for the first, let's say, 5 to 6 years, I had to toe certain lines because at the end of the day, I had to go up every single year for my work permit to be renewed. So I can have the opportunity to actually stand up for myself and say to a coach, well, no, you're being a certain way. I'm not going to behave like this or tolerate X or Y or Z because I need to maintain that work permit. And they are the ones that have all the power with the Home Secretary, as they call it, immigration as we know it, to go and file for that work permit on your behalf. So you have to go through a lot of puppeteering in order to maintain that position. A lot of things started going south for myself from the time I was able to have permanent residency, because now I no longer have to stand and watch a coach refer to a group of black men as the brothers and not by name. I no longer have to watch a coach, pretend to fight for a black player when it comes to the renewing of his contract, when you know he has contributed so much. And then you go to a white player who haven't even contributed, not even a quarter, and you give him an extension.
So take a pin 1 minute because we have Ken. He has just joined our virtual studios. So good day to Ken. Ken?
Hi, Ken. Nice to see you.
Hi, Ken.
Hello. Before I ask you your first question, Ken, I thought about something. I don't know if you felt the same way, Keevo. I asked myself how the NFL would have fared if all black players and those who supported them stood in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick and boycotted games. And it's interesting because of what Kenwin just said. Kenwin, I mean, were you taught to stand up with your teammates as regards to social justice or social injustice, or did the club have policies against such?
So this is a really touchy issue. I haven't said a lot coming out of George Floyd and everything that has been happening for a lot of reasons. A lot of people out there have a lot to say on the issue, and that is all well and good. I think some people are not taught to recognize racism. It has some people who actually haven't. Some people are not taught to recognize racism. Who haven't actually haven't experienced racism, and then there are the people that have directly experienced it, right? As a person who have been in an industry that have experienced racism, I'd say from day one in England, I have a different point of view because, like, I had a conversation with a few people and I said, listen, I have viewed this racism thing from on all sides. And when I say all sides, the administrative part, the organization that wants to do something to try and combat it, how strong they are, how much headway they get in. I've been on the side of being racially abused in a lot of respects, whether it is on the football field from fans, outside the stadium, and even on the days that I would like to not be a footballer, on the street, I have to protect my family from it. And even till this day, I still get messages from on all ranges of social media that have a lot of racist undertones in it and boldface racist statements. But at the same time, people need to understand that what is going on in the world and in America especially, people are burning things to the ground. At the end of the day, it is going to depend on the economic strength of our people in a lot of respects. Because if everyone had stood up to the NFL owners, what you are doing is messing with their money. So they will have no choice but to change their actions and change whatever bylaws, whatever policies they have in place in order for everyone to be happy, because you are messing with the money that is going into their pocket. It has nothing to do with you being black, because at the end of the day, as much as they don't like black people, as they so claim, you know you have to go get a black person because he's a superior athlete to drive your team and your sports forward. But there are things that you can do.
Don't take away from my questions later on. So let me just take a question with you one time. I'm going straight to Ken, because I met Ken while I was in school at the Montfort University in Leicester. And it will be interesting to hear Ken say to me again, but to the persons, the viewers, and also to our panelists, your definition of race, Ken. I have always heard you define race differently to what these gentlemen have just done. Can you give us your definition of race, sir?
Yeah, well, can you hear me okay?
We have enough feedback.
Some feedback.
A lot of echo, yeah?
Yeah.
Hold on.
You could try now, Ken.
Let me try this.
You're good now. I'm hearing you better now. I'm hearing you good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. The Sport Against Racism definition is the UNESCO definition, which there's only one single race. It's called the human race. If there was more than one race, it would be called human races. We don't use terms like interracial, mixed race, biracial, Irish race, TNT race. You know, biologically, and particularly after DNA was discovered, we can prove that we are all part of one single race. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Okay. But what we call the Anglo-American definition. I remember I spoke to Jesse Jackson about this years ago, and he said that America is not ready for the single race theory. So they have to go through a period of racial equality. Okay. But that confuses the issue because people start using those terms, and they say it's a social construct, and it's used by sociologists, interracial, biracial, but we're not all sociologists, so people get very confused. And it's, for example, my family's from Zambia, so they speak Bantu-based language, and it doesn't appear anywhere they use tribe and ethnicity. And the same with German. In German dictionary, for example, the word race is known as a Nazi construct, and so it creates Übermenschen and Untermenschen. So the Nazis took the Jim Crow laws and developed them into a multiracial Germany with the Aryan race at the top, and Roma, Jews, because the Jews is a religion, Jewish religion, and they transformed it into a race. So we use in Ireland, and certainly SARI, we use the one race, what we call the one race theory. So we don't use terms like Caucasoid, Negroid, or Mongoloid, which is a triple race theory. Yeah, so we do differ from Anglo-American.
As Ken keeps mentioning, SARI, just to let you all know, that is his organization that he's a partner with, that's Sports Against Racism Ireland. Keevo, what are your thoughts on different aspects of social justice that exist universally and in sports? And when you talk about social justice, you're talking about gender, equality, money, nationality, and yes, nationality, because even here in Trinidad and Tobago, with the influx of Venezuelans, it will be a matter of you're not Trini, you're not Trinidadian. What are your thoughts on the different aspects of social justice?
Well, I think that, but I want to tie social justice into racism. And for me, I see racism as a systemic approach to deny a group of people social justice. So if we look at social justice now, we now see social justice being the benefit of distribution of wealth, opportunities, etc. And we see racism taking that away from people. And I think what has happened is that I really think the media has a great part to play in creating or conditioning the mind of the Trinidadian or the white man, the black man, etc., into believing certain types of agendas. So when we see a Venezuelan coming into our country, it's because of the media and what we have been told that conditions our approach to them. So we see a Venezuelan and we think they can only do one thing. They're only good for one thing because we have been conditioned that way. If we give a child a certain type of information, the child is going to, in essence, behave and react to certain things. So we don't think in terms of us being children, but we still are conditioned. So the level of conditioning that we are being given by media creates a mindset and a behavior towards a race, towards a gender, based on what we are given. So I think it needs to be more inclusive, where we see our similarities more than we see our differences. When we see more similarities, we can speak on that level, but the differences is what causes the friction.
Mr. Brian Lewis, with what your namesake just said, I'm going to ask a somewhat stupid question, even though my parents said there is no such thing. Is racism learned or hereditary?
So I'm glad you asked that, because I go back to my original point. I hear what Capitan said, Kenwin, and it highlights on the different views and explanations, and it highlights to me the fact that this is a very complex. It's a complex topic because there are various perspectives and lens, right? As I was saying earlier on before Ken came on, maybe it's because I grew up. I'm a child of the '60s. I grew up during the Black Power era, the civil rights era. Even though I was young, in Belmont, growing up single parent, you experience that social activism. And as I was saying earlier on, my social construct of racism and race goes back to what they were fighting for in the 50s, the 60s, apartheid, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King. Those were the idols for us growing up. Stokely Carmichael, Marcus Garvey, Kwame Ture, who was supposed to be Carmichael, changed his name. So Nelson Mandela. So for me, it went back, as I was saying earlier on, to the 17th century and the 400 years of European dominance, when black, colored people, first people, indigenous people were not considered fully human. All right? So that having been said, like Kenwin spoke of his experiences, I've had experiences where purely because of the color of my skin, people crossed the road. It didn't have anything to do with money or position, because those instances would have happened while I was in position as Olympic Committee something, including president. Where I've gone to a sports-related meeting and waiting for an elevator, people refuse to come in the elevator. Refused. Not once, not twice. I've had those experiences. I've had those experiences where I've been racially profiled at immigration in my travels, purely because of my color of my skin. It had nothing to do with how well I'm dressed. I'm just saying, right? Bow tie, how partial, whatever. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with the color of my skin. And we could put, I'm saying people have different experiences. So my fight for using the power of sport for social, because sports is powerful, to give youth, young people the opportunity so they can have social upward mobility. But at the end of the day, I come from an era where, bow tie or not, three-piece suit or not, how we experience race relations and racism is about conduct. Because I can't tell if Kenwin or Kevon or Ken or yourself racial. I could feel so. But if you behave in a particular way, then I can make a strong inference. And what I'm saying is, that's the difference when people talk about Black Lives Matter, people talk about All Lives Matter. I hold the view. We need different views. For me, as I was saying, if because of the color of a person's skin, their ethnicity, their religion, sexism, the gender, they are exposed to discrimination, or where they are not valued, whether it is economic, as Kenwin says. So I don't dilute it. I don't dilute it. I'm sorry. That's my experience. I'm a child of the Black Power movement days. Nelson Mandela, I said Martin Luther King. And then we had an experience. We had an experience here in Trinidad. I think Kenwin knows that. Where I'm just saying to put balance. There are some sports that are considered Black people sports. Forgive the use of the term. Some considered indoor sports and some considered white elite sports. Yes. Right here in Trinidad and Tobago. And let me put it this way. So, for example, people point out, right, Kenwin, you know this. Mm-hmm. How come they don't have more Indians playing football? Mm-hmm. Right? On vice versa, if you understand what I'm saying, certain mm-hmm. sports. So it's a wrong answer. And all I'm saying is I agree with Kenwin's point, where economic power kind of gives you that leverage. But as Kenwin himself was saying, right, he was still exposed to regardless of. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, and the core of it, there's an element of this whole conversation about whether it is Black Lives Matter that we can't dilute. Correct. It comes on in this context to the color of your skin.
So now that we have introduced the terminologies, and I want our guests who are now joining us on Facebook and our YouTube channel, you have just listened to the first segment. We have introduced the concepts of race, racism, and social justice by the experiences and the different perspectives of these gentlemen. I would like us to closely look at sports, racial inequality, and social justice through the lens of The Guardian. Take a quick look.
As the Star-Spangled Banner played, Tommy and John bowed their heads and raised their gloved fists in a defiant demand for human rights that echoed around the world. Their protest against the unjust treatment of Black Americans and people of color everywhere was a watershed moment in civil rights history.
With 50 years of that poster being there, we three cannot change society to make it better without the help of you.
In the face of adversity, the struggle continues. Now, there's many of us look for comfort in non-involvement. But see, you can run, but you cannot hide.
You can run, but you cannot hide. Keevo, are we hiding? Is our society, our community, our country being an influencer, doing enough to discuss racism and other social justice? And I want to talk specifically in sport and through sport.
I don't think enough is being done. I remember somebody said about 2 weeks ago, I looked at a video where the young woman said, you have to be an advocate for something more than yourself. When you get a platform, you have to be an advocate for something more than. I'll draw reference to someone as simple as Tupac and Bob Marley. We know them for their talent, but we know them for something bigger than that, right? And it allowed for us to understand them on a deeper level. Muhammad Ali, right? So being an advocate for something more than yourself allows you the ability to now educate those who are following you. Because when you have a tribe, the tribe of people listen to what you are listening to and believe what you believe. So I think collectively, it hasn't been done. And I think there's power in numbers, strength in numbers. And I think things have been done in silos where, let's say, for example, Kenwin is an advocate, but Kenwin doesn't have a group of influencers, a collective group of people who have that following, who can now create a movement. Kenwin may not be able to move these people by himself, but people have so many different agendas that, all right, this is not my fight. I don't want to get into this, etc., etc. So there's a challenge in the collective agreement at the top, right? Because we differ in views, we differ in what our agenda is. I want to make money alone. I don't want to get into politics, etc. So because of the difference in... Okay, go ahead.
To get to your point there, Keevo, sometimes I think we have a lot of scared people.
Yeah.
Because these people behind closed doors will share your same views, but they also want to keep their position. They also want to be comfortable in keeping the economic flow that they have. They want to be invited to the same parties. They don't want to seem to go against the grain.
Correct.
Right. So that is why you will find a lot of people who have these views, and they may have a name, they may have a following, but for issues such as this, they can't seem to get people to go because they're still in that single individual mindset. And also they're very scared to actually speak up against. We've seen that for, let's say in our country, let's say for 60, 70 odd years of even where politics is concerned, you have that. So we get accustomed to a certain system, a certain way of operating, of doing things. What you would have is that the people who have been embedded in that system, you will get them sticking fast to it. The people who are now coming up now, they will just say, you know what, I'm not bothered. I can't be bothered to get involved because this has nothing to do with me. It's not going to change because this is how it's been. And then you have more, I think you have more disenchanted people than you have people willing to actually be motivated by change and wanting better.
It's interesting that you say that, and going back to your point, Keevo, there's in sports there's something called collective bargaining agreements, CBAs, and people need to understand the power of CBAs. But back to you, Kenwin, during Blackout Tuesday, you posted on social media the following, and I quote, "The term blackout is defined as a temporary loss of vision and consciousness, the exact opposite of our movement and purpose." Can you go deeper into what you meant when you post at a time where every single organization globally who wanted to be seen and heard participated in that? And I found that to be so, it was powerful.
Yeah, but again, also that was against the grain. Now, I had a friend who came on and wanted me to be so much a part of that. You know, she was trying to convince me. I was like, listen to me, I will not do it. Not for the fact that I'm not in solidarity with everyone, but you're going to have people who are going to jump on that bandwagon, and a lot of corporations jump on that bandwagon because they still want to maintain that economic fluidity. They want that status. They need to keep the consumers on board, because at the end of the day, during this entire thing, as you have seen, there are so many instances of people not agreeing or not going along with the masses, being themselves, whether it is not standing up for justice, for equal rights, and have made certain statements. They either lose their jobs, the people start talking about boycotting their companies, and understand this is how they're making their living. Now, when I posted that, again, as I said to my friend, it's not because I don't stand in solidarity, it's the fact that I have experiences across all fractions to deal with racism. And as I also posted on Twitter, at the end of the day, you don't like to see places burn, but they have to burn, because if I can take away your luxury, you have no choice but to hear what I'm saying and force to make changes. If I continue in my luxury, I'm not going to pay attention to what you're speaking about. You could scream from morning till night. I will not pay attention because I'm still in my luxurious position. And at the end of the day, all these businesses that are burning, they are going to be, they are insured, because I'm pretty sure you can't have the business without being insured. You're going to get your money back. But at the same time, if I have no place to go and buy and you have no place to go and sell, what you give as meaning to life will be non-existent. So in order for things to get back to that, I'm going to have to listen to you and I'm going to have to make changes. And I, being the person that I am and have gone through, because again, I do lend to the idea of the question that you said before. People are taught racism. You're not grown with it, because if you are taught not to dislike anybody, you wouldn't do it. You would like everybody because you'll have qualities that you would like from Tom, Dick, Harry, white, black, blue, green, or what the other. But if you are taught by someone to stay away because, no, this person is black and black people are bad, or stay away from Indian people are not nice, they not, stay away from white people, of course you're going to, from the time you're a child, you're going to develop concepts in your head, and that is what you're going to stick with. But the term being black,
that is very interesting, because I just want to cut you there, Kenman, because I want you to hold that point and it will come back to our solutions segment, because that is very important as a coach and as a player, because I wanted to be able to address that in our solutions point. You can, you put something there, and I would like you to read it out to the viewers in our private chat. You could tell us about Angela Davis. Can you just put that out quickly to our viewers?
Yeah, well, Angela Davis I think a point she made is very appropriate. She said that it's not being good enough to be non-racist. We have to be anti-racist. People say, "Oh, well, not non-racist," but anti-racism is proactively anti-racist. And I think it's really important as well. You're talking about running away. I think people with lighter skin pigmentation, and it's all down to melanin. If we have lighter skin pigmentation, we should not run away. We should be anti-racist as well. And Peter Norman, the white guy that's in the image, the Black Glove demonstration, he's a very important player because he was second and he was the silver medalist, and he had a badge on, and it was the Olympic Project for Human Rights, which Harry Edwards started off as good old mate of mine. But I think that's really important that as a white man, an Australian, he stood up. He stood with the two guys. In fact, it was his idea. When they came out, they were so nervous they left a pair of gloves in the dressing room, and he said, "Well, put one glove on the right hand and the other glove on the left hand." That's how they have by using different hands. It's really interesting, yeah. But when he went back to Australia, he was barred from the Australian Sports Federation. He was never represented as Australia again in anything, and he was also he wasn't allowed into the Sydney Olympics. Can you imagine? Yeah, it was completely blanked. So I think he's a great inspiration for us in Ireland. And we also, Nelson Mandela, of course, said that sport has the power to change the world. I think it's really important that we keep reminding ourselves that Nelson Mandela was a boxer, a champion boxer, before he became a politician. You know? He's a sport background.
Can I put my hand up to make a quick point?
Of course.
To be quick. You know, we have this way we try to pivot, duck away from the conversation. I've always found that in my experience with the issue of whatever definition, race, color, right? Look at Kenwin. And Kenwin knows this, so it's positive. I have had what I consider a cordial relationship with Kenwin over the years, right? We have communicated, and I've communicated with Kenwin in a very encouraging manner always. I like Kenwin. I feel he has done a lot. But listen to something, right? The amount of times I've seen Kenwin dragged unfairly by the fans of football in Trinidad and Tobago and the people in Trinidad and Tobago, right? And I've had the unfortunate experience to be once in hearing the strength of a conversation and heard Kenwin described in a racial tone, right? Because of the color of his skin. It's not about colorism. And how people interact with Kenwin. I am putting it out here that it has to do with some people may have found it too black. And I am saying, and I've said, and I continue to say, and I've been vocal when I have to be, that we have to understand that in terms of the color of your skin, it is real. I don't want to hear, no offense, right? I mean, I'm just getting a little, I don't want to hear theoretical academic conversations. I tell people internationally, I don't want to hear it. Right? Because who wear the shoe feel the pinch when you're talking about racism. All them theories don't make one iota good because black people still being disadvantaged, undervalued, pressured, held to a higher standard because of the color of their skin. And I see it right here in Trinidad and Tobago. Who too black to be? Or black people can't do this. They can't run this. They can't run business. Man, listen. Who wear the shoes feel the pinch. Let's not dress around the conversation. I'm not saying you all are. I'm saying in general.
So, Mr. Lewis, if I well, Brian Lewis, I should say.
Yeah, please.
Then how do you suggest sports TT, or I wouldn't even say suggest because that could go into the next segment. I will go better than that. What is the attitude, being the head of TTOC and Caribbean as well? What's the attitude of Sports TNT and the Caribbean sports as regards to this matter that we're speaking about? What is the attitude?
This is what I was saying. You can't begin to solve a problem unless you admit there is a problem and an issue. And I tell you all something. I say to all your listeners, whatever, all your viewers, the people on this panel. One of these days, I will address an issue that has been characterized in a particular way, and I have been characterized as it. It has to do with the Tima Williams issue, right? Where it has been characterized in a particular way. But one of these days, I will be given the go ahead by the lawyers to say, right? But I'm saying there are real systemic, structural, cultural issues, even here in Trinidad and Tobago, far less when you step out. Look in terms of Kenwin and Dwight York and all the players who come, because my concern, I understand, is global. But I have a particular passion for my people, for us, Trinbagonian. Well, if Kenwin, like Dwight York, went and got all his badges that wanted to be a coach or a manager in the English Premier League or the Irish League or Scottish League or Spanish League, what are their chances? I'm just saying, look at baseball, football, but look at the state. Look, when you take us away, us away from, because if we could run fast, jump high, whatever, where do we get the same opportunities off the field? Look, even here in Trinidad and Tobago, there's the perception that foreign is always better. Come on.
So that leads me to this question: care versus entertainment. And Keevo, I want you and then Kenwin to answer it. Should fans care if an athlete be a part of a social justice struggle, or only focus on their entertainment value? Because it speaks to what Mr. Brian Lewis is saying. Mm-hmm. Because it's only when Kenwin can entertain us and score a goal and make us jump up that he is of value to us. But I ask the question, with all that he went through, if he had stepped out and said, here, going on, I am not going to work on the field to represent the red, white, and black because of systemic problems that we have in Trinidad and Tobago, would you as a fan, Keevo, support him?
Definitely. I think it, as I said before, you have to be an advocate for something more than yourself. If there were no global issues, and the world was a utopian ideal, then Kenwin just play football, right? Because there's nothing else for you to fight for. But I think the fact that you have been given a platform, you have a responsibility to take action if you see something that makes you angry. I don't think everybody has the wherewithal to be that champion. As much as it may affect you, you may create an organization and have somebody represent you. But if it is that you think that you yourself as a brand and as a person have that capacity to represent your cause, I think by all means do that, right? Because we have a lot of different things that are problems that need to be fixed. So there's no better way than fixing a problem than having a platform to fix it. All right. So the power of one is one thing, but I still go back to the fact that the collective power is very important. And I want to touch on what Brian would have said in terms of, black coaches not being able to be given the opportunity to coach in abroad and in these Premier Leagues. I think what happens, racism is so well orchestrated that if you have the concept of a fence around your house, right, and you have your dog in your fence, if you push that fence further back, the dog may not see the fence and have the belief that he is free, right? There's freedom because he sees more landscape. So what happens, I think, a lot of times is that racism is so ingrained in society that the powers that be put things in place to create opportunities for one or two, so that the collective now says, well, all right, Kenwin and Dwight will get through, so we could relax now. Because they have been seeing a collection of people causing problems or agreeing and wanting to create a movement. So instead of having that barrage of 300 people coming in, they let 2 in to calm down with 298. That's the concept. Yeah.
So is it, Kenwin, and I'm coming to you, are you saying that Trinidad and Tobago and Caribbean athletes need to also boycott? And if so, do you think that they should seek the support of fans? And I ask that question with the backdrop that in college football, which supposed to start soon, one university literally said there was a letter penned by one of the footballers, which was supported by the entire technical staff and players, that said that if it is you can't support me in the struggle, then don't come to our games. We prefer to play in front of 1,000 persons than to play in front of 70,000. Talk to me, Kenwin.
This is so deep, it would be unreal. Number one, I think, again, like I said earlier, it's about the bravery, the courage of the individual. So regardless of if you have 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 people behind you, to stand for what you know is right, on what you deem to be fair. One thing we have to remember is that as human beings, and this includes black, white, blue, yellow, green, back in the early centuries, especially where the Roman Empire is concerned, you have to remember that sport for them was watching tigers rip apart people, men kill men. That was sport. Regardless of where you come from, they're going to put you in that ring, and you entertain them. These days, all those coliseums are now sport. So people can really care less, and if you look into the backgrounds or statements of a lot of players on various issues, people could care less of if your house burned down, if you have off-the-field problems in your home, whatever the case is. You are expected to come out into an arena and perform admirably. It is for the entertainment. players who stand up for the cause, I do believe it's because of their experience. And they want to see something change for not only at the present time that they're in, but also for future generations. Because we all know people have been trying from time and time and again to try and change some of these um, inequalities, I would say, in sport and the other opportunities in life. The great thing about us as athletes in whichever discipline of sport, you have a platform to help drive that change. But it will only depend on your belief, the courage that you have to stand against, to go against the grain, to swim upstream like the salmon. That is all it's going to depend on. It's not going to depend on your mother convincing you, on your father, your brother, your friend to come and join along, because your protest will never be genuine. The change that you think you will achieve after something like that, it will never hold any value. You yourself have to have that conviction. And again, it might be of the case of an experience that happened directly to you, around you, or you have it deep within you to have a driving force because it happened to your friend, or what you see in public now. Because like I said, there are some people who haven't been able to identify racism. There are people who have not experienced it. And then there are people that experience racism to different degrees. So it all depends on your conviction as a person, what you believe to be wrong or right. Because, the people who are still not on the justice train or podium at the moment, and we've seen it recently in a lot of posts here in Trinidad, the Diane's Tea Shop, the Booths, and the other guy, Stephen Broadbridge, I believe. Um, they actually believe the way that they think, and the things that they are saying are right.
Ken, from your work at SARI, what is
Yeah.
the UK and other global communities that you have been in touch with doing to address this topic? And you could also speak as regards international federations as well.
Yeah. Well, I just put it in the chat line there that FIFA is the only global association that has a charter, a strategy on human rights. And I think that's really important. Like, I think Trinidad and Tobago Futsal, for example, can adopt the charter. We're trying to force, kicking and screaming, the Football Association of Ireland into this, that each association should have a human rights officer to look at all forms of discrimination. I think it's important that we're talking about racism, but there's other forms of discrimination that's connected to that. Like, for example, sexism, homophobia. We have a problem in this country with Islamophobia. And Ken Wynn will be familiar with this because we had a shameful act carried out by an Irish footballer, a co-player in Stoke City. Because we don't have a hate crime legislation in the Irish Republic, we could actually do nothing about this. So it's a combination of, first of all, for us, it's education, which is really important. They work in schools, and punishment, like prosecution and proper legislation to stop racism. I think it's a carrot and stick that's the approach we use. But the problem is that in Europe, and I said it as well, and I agree with Brian on this, where are the black managers? Like, we had a Chris Hutton who was half Ghanaian, half Irish. He got a rough deal. Every club he's been in, and there's only a handful of black managers in England, for example, and we don't have any in the Irish Republic. So usually, like Mukhtar, it was a colleague of mine who comes originally from Algeria. He's got a FIFA Pro license. When he applied for a job in the Football Association, they gave him an underage football team. It's crazy, So we know there's institutional racism. We know there's racism on the sidelines, in the dressing rooms. We're fighting a rig election. Suddenly there's a big awakening now with what's happened in the United States, and people are asking me. I've done lots of talks in the last week. Some of our athletes for example, who come from different backgrounds, Nigeria, South Africa, they've come out and said, yeah, they've been abused, but they were afraid to report it. Now they're opening up about it, which is good. But we need a strategy. We need to combat it through a united force against racism. I think that's really important.
We're going to take a quick break because for me, this is the most important segment.
Yeah.
After the break, we're going to present suggested solutions and recommendations to this problem. But at the same point in time, seeing the passion of Mr. Brian Lewis and hearing the tone, the voice of Mr. Kenman Jones just make us recognize as an association that we want to speak more to this. And we really would like to invite you all, gentlemen, and at another time, we'll find some other, as Mr. Lewis say, innovation is very important. We'll find other ways of doing this discussion and continuing having these discussions to be able to educate our stakeholders. So as I said before, right after the break, we'll present suggested solutions and recommendations. You're watching Futsal868 Corner Talks as we speak social justice and racial inequality. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Futsal868 Corner Talks. To those who are joining us on our Facebook page and YouTube channels, today we talk sports, racial inequality, and social justice. This segment, we speak about solutions, suggested solutions. And with that being said, I want to take a quick clip at Sports Against Racism Ireland. Let's see what our friends in Ireland are doing.
The people who benefit from SARI's work are mainly children and youth, working class, disadvantaged, many of whom are from the ethnic minorities. We also work with reprogrammed refugees and those seeking asylum, most of whom live in direct provision centres scattered across the island of Ireland.
With your funding, we could create more opportunity for these young people to not just to come together, but as well as to educate them more in diversity.
SARI believes that sport in general, and football in particular, are powerful tools for breaking down barriers and bringing people together. As Nelson Mandela said, sport has the power to change the world.
Help us celebrate diversity. Thank you for your donation.
Before we continue, Mr. Lewis, you will love to read this point here from young Prince Gordon. Can't use Mr. Lewis if you don't use passion in the same sentence. Thank you very much for watching the show. Straight at you, Brian. What can the Futsal Association of Trinidad Tobago, starting home first? You have to see about your house first. What can the Futsal Association of Trinidad Tobago and other NGBs do to be able to address racial inequality and social justice through sports?
Accept that it is real. Educate, awareness. If you don't admit we have a problem, so if you look at what is the net impact of the programs you run, is it living up to what your vision and your mission is in terms of equality, in terms of social justice? It's that's really important. As I said, this is 400 years of European domination of the world and they're imprinting on the psyche of civilizations. They view that black-colored First Peoples, indigenous people aren't fully human. And that's a historical perspective that the world hasn't addressed. The other thing is, and this may seem controversial. So in my work in gender equality, I've been on an IOC working committee to look at gender equality. One of the things they have done, Kenman and Keevo, is in terms of women and females in sport, etc., they have had what they call gender neutral words, right? In terms of how you describe women. I think that what we need to look at is racial neutral words, if we're serious. So what do you mean when you say blacklist? You know, the use of the word black. If we're talking about taking down colonial statues, etc., we also have to look at the language and the words we use. What do you mean by when you say black magic? What are you really saying? You understand what I'm saying? Anyway, I know the others want to have an input, and you did promise that we will have this discussion because we can't solve the problems of racism and race relations that is 400 years plus in an hour. So I look forward to further discussion.
Can you share with us some of the work that SARI has done to address our topic, and how can some of that be transferable in terms of solutions to other global communities, including Trinidad and Tobago and our Caribbean neighbors?
I think it's absolutely really important. That I agree totally with what Brian is saying. You probably know about Benjamin Zephaniah, who's got a Jamaican background. He's one of our patrons, and he wrote a poem about that language, the use of black list, black this, black that, the other hit, and he calls it a white list. And if you don't behave yourself, I'll report you to the black house. You know, so it's worthwhile reading Benjamin on that. And we have the clip that you showed is really interesting because you'll find that the people who are in the coaching positions, and the woman with the hijab, the young hijabi, she's a coach as well. So what we have is people from those backgrounds who are coaching the young kids who are coming to Ireland. You know, some of them trafficked in, a lot of them coming from different countries around the world who come over looking for refugee status. So they're in our programs, and we giving them coaching badges and encouraging them to become professional coaches, and a lot of them have become professional footballers. I think it's really important that we're in a very good position here because, it's not about racism in sport. It's using sport as a very important vehicle for a medium for cultural integration and social inclusion. That's what we're about. And you can't have cultural integration without social inclusion. So we look at it in a holistic way. And yes, it's absolutely. We have a very small population of 5 million, and the country's proved to be a very important social lab, a laboratory for other countries around the world. For example, the Hijabs and Hat-Tricks program, which won the Beyond Sport Award in its first year, that's been adopted by other countries around the world. And I think we're very lucky in the sense that we haven't made the mistakes that, say, Britain have made, where they looked at it, they tried to develop a multicultural society. We've been trying to create an intercultural society that's completely different. And so we banned all the lexicon of racism, like the terms like, as I said earlier on, interracial, mixed race, half caste. They're all banned. We binned all them. So I think it's really important to start from the basics, from grassroots. And education is very much part of that. We have a football versus discrimination program where we go into schools and we work with the kids. And it's really working very well, and it's been recognised by UEFA, the Children's Foundation, and also FIFA as well. So we're part of. Also, I think it's really important that Trinidad and Tobago become part of the NGOs there. Sport NGOs become part of the likes of Street Football World, coaches across continents. Widen your scope, and you've got people over here. Look, we've got great connections in the Caribbean, particularly with your neighbouring island, Montserrat. It's not called the Emerald Isle of the Caribbean for nothing, And we don't have many Trinidadians over here, but we know them very well, and we're great mate friends. They're into football, they're into cricket, and I think it's about spreading the word around and bringing it back to Trinidad. We have a lot of interns from all over the world, so they bring the formulas that we create here, we develop here into their countries.
Kenwin, earlier I had stopped you because you were speaking to solutions, and I do apologize again for doing that. But you are now a coach, and what mechanisms would you employ and advice that you give to players and even other coaches as to ways in which sports can address this topic?
It is a bit difficult to give people methods because, like I say, and I guess everybody's chiming in on the same tune at this present time, it is about education in its basic form. If something is not right, something is not working, we have the ones that have the knowledge have to be able to educate people on not only on what is wrong or right, but also what is the way forward. What is the right thing to do. We have to be able to do that. I have grown up in primary school and secondary school amongst all races, as you like, in Trinidad and Tobago. And then on top of that, my career took me to an even wider scope of races, quote unquote, in the world. And the choices that I made while I was in primary school, secondary school, and all of that stemmed from, my parents, because I never had the thought, and I was never taught about racial indifferences in people. So in school, I had Indian friends, black friends, white friends, Chinese friends, how much ever different races that we have in Trinidad, I had all those friends. In secondary school, the same. And not one day, I think, even if I was supposed to get upset with someone, I would have the thought of, oh, your race first, and anything else derogatory I could say after that, towards that person. So I wasn't taught it, and I never expressed that ever, till this day, no matter which situation that I've gone through with anyone, whether they have racial thoughts against me or they had racial actions or racial words, I never had the thought. So it is going to be down to the education of the younger ones, and also the re-education, the reprogramming of the people who are already set in their ways. It is a tough job, but it has to happen, or else we'll continue down this slippery slope that we're on.
Keevo, you know the saying, when the US sneeze, Trinidad and Tobago catches the cold. In this case, it might be COVID. How are we gonna get our house in order, brother? You said it before. You are the voice of the people. Mm-hmm. How do you expect us to get our house in order before we reach to a breaking point that we are observing in the US and in the UK? And I want to speak from a fan point of view. I want to speak from a social media influencer point of view. I want to speak from a comedian point of view.
Well, first of all, I don't think locally we actually know what racism looks like. We have a very microcosmic view of a small part of what racism is. Kenwin could definitely identify that some of the things that he probably would have experienced abroad definitely is not what he would experience locally, right? And we as a collective in Trinidad and Tobago have no idea what it looks like. So I think we need to identify on a larger scale what racism really is in our country, right? I had the privilege of going abroad and traveling to see some football games, and I went to a certain place and I finally knew what it meant to be Black abroad. So I think we need to understand what it is before we even try to fix it. So we could have the same eye to identify it now and now try to make some changes. And Kenwin touched on some of the points where, first of all, I think the language at home has to change. Because as much as I play with my Caucasian friend and I play with my Chinese friend, etc., football-wise, they go back home, and do the parents have that same mindset? Do the parents now say, no, he can't come to the to our house? Is that a different type of conversation that's happening at home that changes the mindset of, as Kenwin said, the parent and also the child? And I think the fact that we have the opportunity now to have the platform, and Kenwin Jones is a personality, we have different personalities, we now can go to the schools and allow our platform and the ability to have that attention from the youth to change things, so that at least in the 8 hours that they are in school, race is being spoken about, so we help in reprogramming at least the next generation. We're not saying that the generation that is set in their ways are irreparable, but I think at this point in time, we need to really focus on the next 10, 20 years of the mindset of the average, well, I don't know what generation they're going to call them, Gen Y or Gen F or whatever, but let's just say how are they going to talk, you know, at the bars or at home or with their friends? What is the conversation going to be like? So now is the time for us to dig deep into the 4, 5, 6-year-old and see how the conversation can change for the next 10 years.
Just to let you all know, I think that the place you're talking about was the San Siro. Poor fella. That team that he supports. Poor fella.
It was the San Siro on the you know. That's interesting.
Okay, all right. I was just, you know. But coming back at you, Keevo. You come from the open mic forum.
Yeah.
How important is open spaces in sports to have these type of discussions?
I think it is of paramount importance to have that freedom of speech. And I think it's the only unedited space right now, the comedic space, the spoken word space, because everybody there who sits in the crowd has a passion for change. And they are sometimes called the misfits or the rebels for the main fact that they're not conforming to whatever is being thrown at them. So they see racism or whatever issue for what it is, and they allow themselves to speak openly. And I think if we can invest more in hearing the viewpoints of these people, somebody as well known as Mohammed Mawakil from Trinidad and Tobago, who speaks on these issues very eloquently, giving him a larger platform, and many other people who are part of that community to be able to show people in a creative way what actually is happening, because they are the people who are the actual voice, because they go dig deep, they understand what has been happening throughout history and are able to create a product that is a little more palatable for the layman. You know, as we said before, a lot of people don't understand certain terminologies, they don't understand certain things. Giving it to a poet or a comedian allows people to be entertained, yes, but educated at the same time.
Correct. Gentlemen, it has been amazing, and I would like each one of you to give your closing thoughts, because it is an hour and 20 minutes and counting. And I know I had asked you for hour, and I know Mr. Brian Lewis is hitting the place. Don't back. So I will start with Mr. Lewis in terms of your closing thoughts, sir.
As we said, I can't emphasize enough education. I mean, if you don't know your history and you don't know where you came from, well, you won't know where you're going. You know, I over the last couple of weeks, I keep telling I have children, they're big now, 30, 31, and they're friends. I keep saying Basil Davis, 6th of April, 1970. Go check it out. Basil Davis, 6th of April, 1970. That's my closing words.
As always, Mr. Lewis, it looked like you're preparing us for the sequel, which we definitely will be having. Straight to you, Ken.
Yeah, I just put a few lines there. Ken was talking about his coaching program. We can certainly be give some technical support. And the man who was interviewed on the clip you showed, he pretty often he travels to Trinidad and Tobago often, and we can set up a meeting. I think we can help with, finding sponsorship for a program that you can set up very similar to what they've done in St. Lucia, where our colleagues are members of FAIR, Football Against Racism in Europe. It's a bit of Europe in the Caribbean. So I think a couple of really interesting practical actions that we could engage in together, because we would have so much in common, with you and small populations. We're for us now, 17, 18% of our population was born overseas. Where I live in Dublin City, 40% of the population was born overseas. It's very broad. It's very broad ranging. I think it's, we as I said, we can help each other. We can learn from each other, but we're also prepared to share all our knowledge. We've been operating since 1997, and we're very experienced in the whole area of anti-racism and using sport to combat racism, and using the human rights platform. And I'm sorry I joined you late. I was trying to make the connection. And we always use the excuse that we're 20 minutes behind Greenwich Mean Time, in the little island we have. But it's great to share the information with you, and great to hear from you. And I've got to visit your country sometime. I look forward to it.
Well, most definitely, because I would have invited you since in times in Leicester. So we definitely look forward to having you. And just to let you know that Tarek says hi, by the way.
Yeah.
So on to you, Kenwin.
Work for us in September, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
On to you, Kenwin.
Well, like I would say, the education in all things is most important. I'm not talking about tertiary education. You don't have to have a PhD, but education of life and information, I think, is something that we need to seek. And it is always something that I've lived by from what I've been taught. Jeffrey, you could attest to this because we're from the same roots, more or less. Be the change that you want to see. At the end of the day, you cannot champion people to do better if you are not making the attempt yourself. So for everyone that, is soaking in the information these days and seeing stuff and have all these comments, be that first person to go out and make some small action that is going to champion change. Because I think as much as we're seeing the big issue, it's the minute, microscopic things that we do on a day-to-day basis contribute to the bigger picture.
True.
Last but not least, certainly the voice of the people. Speak to us, Mr. Keevo.
Definitely, I would want to appeal to anyone with any type of platform to definitely be an advocate for something bigger than ourselves. I think we are consumed and we are sometimes selfish, where we just look at our own personal gain and we don't see the importance of having a platform to influence change. So I think we need to educate ourselves a lot more, have more conversation from a grassroots aspect, and identify racism for what it is and see what it is on a larger scale, and not just see it as a derogatory term called by somebody. It's a larger picture for us to be able to break it down into pieces and get rid of it totally. So I really want to appeal to everyone with a platform, use it for something bigger than what your talent is.
So on that note, I want to say thank you very much to our panel, Mr. Brian Lewis, Mr. Ken McCue, Mr. Kenwin Jones, and Mr. Keevan Lewis. I definitely want to continue to collaborate with you all individually and collectively as we continue addressing this topic. And Mr. Brian Lewis said it. We want to let the old talk. We ain't want no old talk. The only thing we want change is innovation. We want to just get things done. And I want to be upfront and say thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming at a very short notice. by invitation and being a part of this thought-provoking conversation. When I sent Mr. Lewis the message, I mean, I was sending messages and he don't respond. But when I sent him that message, he was like, "Topic boy." And I know that it jumped out at him. And I must say thank you to each one of you all for being a part of it. To Ken for staying up. I know the time difference and really showing us love. But not only love to Futsal Association of Trinidad Tobago, but to love to everybody who has been here. I just want to say, please be minded that you can get a recap of our show on our Futsal868 Facebook page, YouTube channels, and ACTN TV. So, as always, this is our message from the Futsal Association of Trinidad Tobago. This is our parting words to you all, and wishing you all a beautiful Sunday evening in terms of your time, in terms of you, Ken, a great day tomorrow, Monday, and God's richest blessings to your families during this very weird, difficult, trying, but yet God-given time. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Good evening to you.